Welcome to another episode of your daily database insights from LiveSite. And at this point, we already have the virtual machine, we have the softwares, and we already took a checkpoint. And all that is left to do is to perform the task of installing the SQL Server database. Now remember, all of this is being tracked based on a project. The project manager already checked out with you and they already asked you to meet a certain deadline in terms of delivering this database so that the project can continue. So we are going to go real quick through the process of installing the SQL Server through the graphical user interface, and it's very easy and very simple. On your software folder, the first thing is you are going to be having different directories or drives on your PC. What I'm having here is pretty much only 2 drives to work with, but on a serious enterprise environment, you're going to be having multiple drives. You're going to have a data drive, a logs drive, a backup drive, or sometimes the backup is going to be on a network, and then you're going to have a temp DB drive. But hey, we're going to see all of that as we keep going. So anyways, we're over here. We're going to mount this software. Once we mount it, this is your installation. You'll run this as administrator, and then that is going to pop up on your screen. And on this installation center, there's multiple things going on here, but we're going to be really focused to do the installation. So we'll go to the installation piece, and all we need to do here today is just to do a new standalone SQL Server installation. So I'll click on that, and this is going to pop up over here. So this is pretty much how a graphical user interface installation works. You'll be clicking things, and then you just need to know where to place things in your file system. So while this is coming up, while you're looking on my left here, you can see that we have planning, installation, maintenance, tools, resources, advanced, and options. So there's multiple things you can do in this installation center, but we can go through all of that stuff when we get to a point where we need to do all that stuff. But on the installation page, you can see that you can install the Power BI report server. Remember, things have changed in SQL Server 2025. Back in the days, we used to have all the entire SQL Server stack of different components shipped into a single SQL Server installation center. But as Microsoft has continued to become so sophisticated over the years, they have decided to decouple the different components so that you only get what you need, so you don't have everything in one single ISO file. So anyway, the installation is already popped up here. All we need to do is to specify the edition, one of the free editions, and of course now they have different types of developer. They need a standard developer and an enterprise developer. Again, these are just pretty much the different types of edition. An edition in this case is going to ship with specific sets of SQL Server features, and for that reason, the type of edition you choose is going to be packed with a specific set of features. So what we're going to choose here is Enterprise Developer Edition, and then we'll click Next. Then we'll definitely accept the license, otherwise we'll not be able to install anything today. Of course, we're not going to be updating any we're not going to be checking this Microsoft updates for now, and of course you should never check that anyways. I do not recommend it, in as much as it says here recommend it. You don't want to have things updating in your environment without your knowledge, so never check that. It's going to show this red bubble, but don't worry about that, don't panic, that is normal. And then it's going to tell you here that it's trying to install some files that are going to be found. Of course, there's nothing found here, so it's going to skip that step. And then you're going to get into this section here where you are going to be needed to connect to your Azure extension for SQL Server. Now, this is something that primarily refers to how you can connect your on-premise SQL Server using Azure Arc, which is going to allow you to easily manage your instances from a single pane of glass on Azure Portal. And of course, it's gonna help with an enhanced security, and of course allow you to integrate Azure services like Azure Backup, Azure Monitoring, and of course Microsoft Defender. And at least you can pretty much manage your inventory, and of course manage your license from a single pane of glass. So we're not going to connect this today, but somewhere down the line, when you're ready to do this, we'll definitely revisit this piece of situation here. So we go to next, and then at this point we're going to be selecting the features we want to install. I'm going to install the database engine. I need to have some SQL Server replication. So this is the main component that we're going to be installing, which is the database engine. And then of course we're going to install some of the features in this main component, which is the SQL Server replication. This is a feature that allows you to copy and distribute data in database objects, and of course synchronize them based on the type of schedules and stuff like that. We can go into detail on that. We're gonna install this. This is a new feature in SQL 2025. It's the AI services and language extension. So we'll install this and figure out what this is all about. And then we will definitely install the full text and semantics extractions for search. This pretty much includes the search engine that supports full text extraction for fast text search, as well as semantic extraction. So I'll install that. I'm not going to install the polybase for now. I'm not going to install the analysis services for now. I'll install the integration services and I'm not going to try to scale out or any of that integration services. My instance root directory, I'll change this to the D drive, and I'll change all of that to default on the D drive, and then I'll go to next. So as we go to next there, we're going to install the default instance. The default instance is denoted by the MS SQL Server, but you can also install a named instance, meaning you can install up to about 25 instances on a single box, but nobody really does that. So out of the 25 instances, they could be like 25 named instances, or they could be 24 named instances and a single default instance. And then we'll go to next. Then we will be over here at the server configuration piece. Now, for the server configuration piece, we have multiple components being installed here. So we have the SQL Server agent. This is going to be the component that allows you to schedule different jobs on your database. And of course, this is going to be the database engine component. Of course, this SQL Server agent, we want to make sure that it automatically starts every time the SQL Server starts. The database engine, this is really where your database are going to be hosted. And the integration services, this is the component that helps with managing your SQL Server integration services packages. Again, packages in this case are going to be your primary tool for writing code and stuff that does extraction, transformation, and loading, depending on the different types of business requirements that you'll be facing in your day-to-day job. When you go over here to the SQL Server launch part, this is going to be the service that manages the execution of external scripts that you're going to be writing using your R, Python, or Java. And this is the SQL full text. This is really the component that manages the full text semantic. And of course, this is the SQL Server browser. This is really a component that just allows the SQL Server instance to be browsable. Most of the time, we don't want it to be browsable, so we'll have that disabled from the get-go. Now, you can enable this checkbox here. This is to perform volume maintenance task privilege to the SQL Server database engine. Pretty much this privilege enables the instant file initialization, the IFI, by avoiding the zeroing of data pages. So what this means is whenever you will be trying to expand the data files or increase their sizes, it's going to be increased instantly without trying to, you know, take time doing so. Of course, on this tab here, you'll see there's something called collation, and of course, collation pretty much refers to the different rules or the rules that define the way you are sorting, you're comparing, or you're storing your character in or within the SQL Server database. You will be sorting this in probably some of the characters are going to be case insensitive or case sensitive, and etc. But we're going to go with the default, which is whatever you're seeing on the screen. So go to next. On this page here, we're going to have the type of authentication mode that we need to use. We'll check the mixed mode authentication. This allows you to use the SQL Server authentication. This is the internal database authentication, and then the Windows authentication, which allows you to leverage Windows accounts or domain accounts. I'm going to punch in the SA password right now, and remember to punch in a very strong password, just for your own sake, of course, for your security purposes. I'll add the current user here by clicking on add current user, right? And then on the next tab here, we're going to go and specify the different data directories that we want to point in or to use for our different databases, so or the data files and stuff like that. So the data root directory, I'll leave that as default, and then on our user database, I am going to try to get a different directory, which is going to be D drive, and it turns out I haven't created the different folders. So what I started doing, what I actually did is I created a file, a batch file, that's going to enable me to create everything that I need. So the batch file, I called it the create directory file. I'll open this so that you can see what I did. And so this one is pretty much creating the different directories that I need on the different drives. So this is going to be my data file directory. This is going to be my backup directory. This is going to be my I think I repeated that. This is going to be my log file, my LDF directory. This is going to be my logging directory, and then there's going to be my temp DB directory. What I can do is change this one to maybe changes. It's gonna be addressing production changes. So I'll save that, close that, and I'll just double click that, and all those directories have been created, so you can see them over there: backup, changes, data, and all that good stuff. So that's a quick way to create your directories that you're going to need for whatever you're doing. So I'll come over there to the D drive, and I need to go to the data directory for my data file or my user database directory. My log directory is going to be on the E drive, and I will grab it over there. And then my backup directory is going to be on the D drive, and I'll grab it over there. There you go. The temp DB configuration is going to be on the next tab over here. So temp DB is always created every time the SQL Server instance is restarted. Now, if you ever run into a temp DB size as a size exploding, then you can always try to reduce the size, but the surest way of managing your temp DB is always going to be to restart your SQL Server. But before you do restart a production SQL Server, you need to find out how to set outage expectations, or to create a an outage window for all that good stuff. So I'll remove this path, and then I'm going to specify the path that I need to use for my temp DB, which is going to be that one, and that is also going to be for the log file for the temp DB. Then on the next tab here, it's going to be for max DOP, or maximum degree of parallelism, which really defines the best defines the best degree of parallelism, meaning every time you're leveraging the different CPUs, you want to make sure that you are using the best execution plans and executing those plans in parallel. So by default, I have two CPUs on this box, and for that reason, I'll just leave it as two CPUs here. Now, if you look at this parameter here, the SQL maxed-out parameter, this is what you are going to use when you're running your installation unattended using a command line. So I just wanted you to note that. On the memory section, again, I've specified, I think, about 4 gig memory on this box. Pretty small, but it should be sufficient enough for whatever we're trying to do here. So I will look at the best recommendation. So I'll just choose that recommendation, and then you have to accept the recommendation you're choosing. And then the next part is on the next tab is to go to file stream. For now, I'm not going to enable that because I don't have any file streams that I'm going to look at yet. But if we need to change this, we can always change this after installation. Now, this is your graphical user interface installation type thing. At this point, I'm going to click next. And then this is the final page before we kick off the installation. At the bottom of this page, you will see that there's a configuration file path. Now this configuration file INI, this is what is actually defining everything that we have chosen during this configuration. So what I'll do is I'll actually go over there, and I'm gonna grab this file, because after this graphical user interface installation, definitely we're going to try to demonstrate how to do this out of sight, out of mind. So I'll paste this one probably here for later. Alright, so I'll kick off the installation. At this point, like I said before, I will just sit and wait and maybe wiggle my toes and just give it some time. And so we are right back here towards the end of this. So one thing is, you have, at this point, you have probably installed the SQL Server database, but you also may need to install the SQL Server Management Studio for you to be able to connect to your SQL Server database. It may be on the box, or you may be able to connect from your laptop, but at this point we have it on, I have it on my laptop, I don't have it on the box. And so the next possible thing is to actually install the SQL Server Management Studio for us to demonstrate how to connect from the box itself. But this is almost done, just waiting for it to finish. And there you have it. SQL Server database has been installed on that box. So that is the final screen that you will get to confirm that your SQL Server installation is successful. And so that's it. If you know anybody struggling to graphically install their SQL Server 2025, you must show them this video. And if they still need some help, ask them to reach out and I can point them in the right direction. Thank you.